Here's a guy who thinks that smart people who are atheists are condescending, but smart people who are theists must be taken seriously.
So we have Eucharistic miracles, we have the Shroud of Turin, we have all the Marian miracles, we have archaeological proof that backs up the Bible.
None of these things are evidence of God, let alone proof. A lot of them aren't even real, but even if they were, they wouldn't point to a God. Why would a bleeding communion wafer be evidence that all of time and space was created by a magical incantation? The Shroud of Turin is very likely a hoax, but even if it were genuine, all it would be evidence of is that Jesus was crucified. It wouldn't at all be evidence that he rose from the dead or did any other miracles. And even if it were evidence of that, it wouldn't follow that he's the incarnation of the creator of all of space and time.
We have the fine-tuning of the universe.
Fine-tuning is actually evidence against the existence of a God, at least an all-powerful one. An all-powerful God wouldn't need to futz around with the settings of the universe to get life to exist within it. In fact, if we lived in a universe with parameters that made the natural development of life impossible, that would be far greater evidence that life is not a merely natural phenomenon.
We have consciousness, we have love.
Those are things the brain does. I'm sure you think they are things the soul does, which I don't think makes any sense. But even if the soul did do those things, how is that evidence that God exists? The existence of one mythical woo-woo entity is not evidence of any other mythical woo-woo entity.
We have so much proof of God, and more particularly of Jesus and what he preached. Look at near-death experiences.
Did Jesus preach about near-death experiences? And how would near-death experiences be evidence that God exists or that Jesus is God? Even if people leave their bodies during these experiences, which they don't, God's existence wouldn't follow from that.
Heaven and hell laid out, clear detail. No one spoke more of heaven and hell than Jesus.
People having hypoxic experiences that they describe as heaven or hell is not evidence that these are places you go after you die. These are near-death experiences, not post-death experiences.
Before Jesus, there was no heaven.
So where did Moses go after he died? Where did Noah and Abraham go?
It's a paradox. The faithful no longer need faith. We have so much evidence that backs up everything we believe.
A lot of the evidence you've cited so far is known hoaxes, unproven assertions, and red herrings that have nothing to do with whether a God exists.
But yet, the modern intellectual, pseudo-intellectual, is always depicted as atheistic or agnostic.
That probably has something to do with the fact that surveys of scientists consistently show atheists and agnostics to be disproportionately overrepresented among their ranks.
Like they're too smart to believe in God. Or only the dumb people believe in God.
Or maybe it's just the case that people who are trained to be epistemically rigorous are applying that rigor to religious claims and finding that they don't withstand scrutiny.
You can't prove the non-existence of something, and why would you? The periodic table of non-existent things is infinite.
There are some things whose non-existence you can prove. You can prove that there are no married bachelors, for example. All you have to do is explain the meaning of the word bachelor.
You know, it's like...
What? It never doesn't come off pompous and arrogant to talk like that.
What's your point? Whether a claim is true or an argument makes sense has nothing to do with how pompous the person presenting it is. There is certainly no shortage of pompous Christian apologists. I never dismiss or even criticize their arguments on the basis of their pomposity. It's irrelevant.
Watch Bill Maher do it right here. Watch how ridiculous this statement is. And also, look how almost cliche it is. The way he's speaking, it's almost like, of course smart people don't believe in God. I mean, like, how could you believe in God?
The human capacity to believe what's not true, to believe what you want to believe, they're never a case of human delusion or mass delusion.
Given how much more common delusions are than miracles seem to be, even if miracles actually happen, they are so rare that delusions are still the more probable explanation for any apparent miracle.
Where Bill, after he, mocks intelligent people who believe in God, saying that they must know that it's not true somewhere deep down, which is insane and quite insulting.
I don't think that's true of all believers, but apostates sometimes say that it was true of them when they were believers. Bart Ehrman and Dan Barker have said this, for example. And if that's insulting, isn't it also insulting when Christians say that atheists only pretend to not believe in God because they just want to sin?
After he's done with that, he says, you know where I'm coming from, right? As if that's just a normal way to believe.
If he thought that was a normal way to believe, why would he ask if his view was understood? That's something you ask when you know your point of view is not obvious.
Like atheism, looking down at intelligent people who believe in God, like that's just a normal position. Like, you know where I'm coming from, right?
That's not something I ever feel the need to ask if I'm expressing a common view. It's something I ask if I'm not sure I effectively communicated some abstruse idea. If I'm expressing a normal view, I just assume they know where I'm coming from.
No, Bill, I don't know where you're coming from. I can't even understand it a little bit. How you can claim to be an intellectual or an intelligent person and you don't believe in God.
Now who's got the condescending attitude?
How do you explain anything?
With a little bit more detail than God did it.
It's just all random?
No, it's not all random. Randomness is not the alternative to theism. Order does not need to be imposed by a god in order to exist.
Well, I guess that makes sense. Your podcast is called Club Random. You are latched on to this random idea.
His podcast is called Club Random, therefore he's latched onto randomness as an idea?
Hate to break it to you, Bill. Everything is quite precise.
Well, no, not everything. There are still natural events which are not entirely deterministic. There is a bit of chance at work.
As Charlie was beginning to say, it's about the fine-tuning of the universe, which no one can deny, and thus proves God, because it's so perfect. It has the fingerprints of a creator who thought it out. Intelligent design. God.
Why would an all-powerful God need to fine-tune the universe? And what reason do we have to believe that the parameters of the universe were ever free to vary in the first place? The mere fact that we can imagine the parameters of the universe being different is not evidence that they ever actually could have been. We can imagine lots of impossible things.
Speaking of intelligent design, I want us now to go to Christopher Langan, recorded with a 210 IQ.
He got that number from an IQ test that he found in the back of a sci-fi magazine that allowed you to look up the answers, and he had to take it twice to get that result. Also, anyone who knows about how IQ tests work knows that they can't measure IQs higher than 160, because there are too few people who test that high that can be used as a big enough sample set to reliably determine the accuracy of the tests.
Who says that he believes in God, and he can prove it to you. And he actually explains it quite simply and nicely. And let's go right here.
Does God exist?
Yes.
Simple as
Yes.
that.
The reality has an identity. Okay? The identity is that as which something exists. Okay? Matter of fact, when you say the word reality, you're naming an identity. You're identifying something.
That's an unnecessarily verbose way of saying that we have a concept of reality.
This.
I'm smiling because your answer on this is so beautiful.
What does that have to do with God? Is he saying that God is reality? I suppose it's pretty easy to prove that God exists if you simply define reality as God, although it's hard to square with the Abrahamic concept of God, which says that God created the universe rather than being the universe. Also, if God is simply reality, what reason do we have to believe that God is a conscious person? There are conscious entities within reality, but what reason is there to believe that reality per se is a conscious, intelligent person?
It just reminds me of Moses at the burning bush. And Moses at the burning bush says, "Who shall I tell the people that you are?" Talking to God. And God says, "Tell them I am that I am."
That's right.
I am identity itself. I'm being himself.
That's exactly right.
How is being itself the same thing as the timeless, spaceless, disembodied mind who created the universe that theologians and apologists talk about? What reason do we have to believe that being itself wrote the Bible or prescribes moral commands?
That's what the CTMU says. It just comes up with the mathematical structure that you need to build a reality out of that. You see? So you come up with that identity and then you search it for its properties. You see, once you've built the preliminary framework, then you start deducing the properties of this identity, and you find out that those properties match those of God as described in most of the world's major religions.
Most of the world's major theistic religions say that God is a person. Reality, or being itself, is not a person.
And the Bible. Perfect. And you can see how simply he explains it. We all accept this idea of reality that we all live in. this thing that holds us together, existence itself. God's name, I am that I am. He is existence itself.
How does I am that I am amount to a declaration of being existence itself rather than a meaningless tautology? If he meant to communicate that he is being itself, do you not think he could have communicated that more clearly? Why does this perfect all-powerful being have the communication skills of a speculum with googly eyes glued to it?
Therefore, this thing that we all name as reality is the presence of God.
It's the presence of God, or it is God?
Even the atheists and agnostics understand reality.
Yeah, but I don't understand what it means to say that reality itself is a person who created the universe and writes books that dictate morality to us.
Christopher Langan was labeled as the smartest man with the 210 IQ.
Labeled by himself, no IQ test that any psychologist would see as remotely legitimate would say that anyone has an IQ over 160.
But there's another man named YoungHoon Kim of South Korea who is said to have a 276 IQ.
And he's at least as big a grifter as Chris Langan.
First off, all the evidence that he uses to prove his IQ is not authentic. The World Academy of Medical Sciences sounds awesome. I mean, it has a website where you can buy courses and has a headquarters located in Mexico? Well, it turns out the only thing prestigious about it is the name. It's not an official body in the medical field at all. And the biggest red flag for me is that they're still selling iPhone 7 cases. He also claims the record was certified by Official World Record, which honestly sounds great. Even though, if we're being honest with each other, I've never heard of them. I've only heard of Guinness. But I mean, the name's there. There is a page on their website that says he is the record holder for IQ, but then someone on the internet realized all you have to do is just pay for it. He also never graduated from any of the listed colleges on his LinkedIn and claims to have written the most difficult IQ problem ever that even AI will never be able to solve. Which he might be right, because I threw it into ChatGPT and it had an answer, but my IQ's too low, so someone please confirm it for me. However, there is this one thing that really put the final nail in the coffin, and it's that there is a research article examining the evaluation of the world's highest IQ holder, who is him. But guess who wrote it? Yeah, these tweets explain it better than I probably ever could.
The highest in recorded history. And do you know what he says? This man with the highest IQ in recorded history? Not just that God exists, which we can prove with the fine-tuning of the universe. No, but that Jesus Christ is God.
Even if this guy really did have a high IQ, that wouldn't be evidence that anything he says is correct. Having a high IQ doesn't prevent you from ever being mistaken, and it certainly doesn't keep you from lying.
He is the way, the truth, and the life. YoungHoon Kim agrees with his 276-point IQ.
Do you know what an argument from authority is?
So the most intelligent man ever knows that the most famous man ever was and is God.
This guy has got to be the most easily grifted person on the internet. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.